You know, people ask me all the time, why do we get old? Why does everything fall apart? Why does my car rust? Why does my house need paint? Why do I get wrinkles? Why does my body just seem to wear out? And they want some kind of deep answer, some cosmic reason. But the real answer is much simpler and much stranger than most people think. It has to do with a law of physics that is so fundamental, so absolutely unbreakable, that it governs everything from the cooling of your coffee to the eventual death of the entire universe. And that law is the second law of thermodynamics. Now, when I say the second law of thermodynamics, most people's eyes glaze over. They think, oh, that's some technical thing about heat engines and refrigerators. And sure, it is about that. But it's also about why you can't unscramble an egg. It's about why your room gets messy if you don't clean it. It's about why your body, right now, as we speak, is engaged in a constant battle against disorder, a battle that it will eventually lose. And that's not pessimism, that's just physics. So let me tell you what entropy is, because that's the key to understanding all of this. Entropy is a measure of disorder, or more precisely, it's a measure of the number of ways a system can be arranged. Imagine you have a deck of cards. There's only one way to arrange that deck in perfect order: ace of spades, two of spades, three of spades, all the way through, just one way. But there are millions and millions of ways to arrange that deck in a disordered state. You shuffle it once, you get one particular random arrangement. You shuffle it again, you get another. The number of disordered arrangements is astronomically larger than the number of ordered arrangements. And that's the heart of entropy. Systems naturally tend toward the arrangements that are most probable, and the most probable arrangements are the disordered ones, simply because there are so many more of them. Now, your body is not a deck of cards, obviously. It's much more complicated, but the same principle applies. Your body is made of trillions and trillions of molecules, proteins, lipids, nucleic acids, water, all kinds of things. And these molecules have to be arranged in very specific ways for you to be alive. Your DNA has to be in a particular sequence. Your proteins have to be folded in particular shapes. Your cells have to be organized in particular tissues. The number of arrangements that correspond to a living, functioning human being is incredibly tiny compared to the number of arrangements that correspond to a dead, disorganized pile of chemicals. So just by pure statistics, just by the laws of probability, your body wants to fall apart. It wants to become disordered. It wants to increase its entropy. But wait, you might say, if that's true, how am I alive right now? How is anything alive? How do we maintain this incredible order in the face of this overwhelming tendency toward disorder? And that's the beautiful part. That's where the real complexity comes in. The answer is that living things are not closed systems. We are open systems. We take in energy from the outside world. We use that energy to maintain our internal order, and we dump waste and heat back out into the environment. We are constantly fighting against entropy, but we are not fighting alone. We are using the sun. Think about it. You eat food, right? Where does that food come from? Well, if you eat a plant, that plant grew using energy from the sun. If you eat an animal, that animal ate a plant, or ate another animal that ate a plant. It all goes back to the sun. The sun is a giant ball of hydrogen fusing into helium, releasing enormous amounts of energy in the process. That energy streams out into space, and a tiny, tiny fraction of it hits the Earth. Plants capture some of that energy through photosynthesis. They build complex molecules like sugars and starches, and then we eat those plants, or we eat animals that ate those plants, and we break down those complex molecules to release the energy stored in them. We use that energy to power all the processes in our bodies. We use it to build proteins, to repair DNA, to move our muscles, to think our thoughts. We use it to create order. But here's the catch. We don't create order for free. Every time we create a little bit of order inside our bodies, we create a lot of disorder outside our bodies. When you digest food, you break down complex molecules into simpler ones. You release heat. You exhale carbon dioxide. You excrete waste. All of that increases the entropy of the environment. So the total entropy of the universe, your body plus the environment, always goes up. Always. The second law of thermodynamics is never violated. You can create local pockets of order, like a living organism, but only by creating even more disorder somewhere else. Now, let's get to the aging part. Why do we age? Why does this process of maintaining order eventually fail? Well, think about what your body has to do to stay alive. It has to constantly repair damage. Cosmic rays hit your DNA and break it. Free radicals, which are unstable molecules produced during normal metabolism, attack your proteins and lipids. Errors occur when your cells divide. Waste products accumulate. Your body has mechanisms to deal with all of this. You have DNA repair enzymes. You have antioxidant molecules. You have immune cells that clean up debris. But these mechanisms are not perfect. They make mistakes. And over time, the damage accumulates faster than it can be repaired. Let me give you an analogy. Imagine you have a car. You drive it every day. You maintain it. You change the oil. You replace the brake pads. You fix things when they break. But even with perfect maintenance, the car will eventually wear out. The metal will fatigue. The rubber will degrade. The engine will lose efficiency. Why? Because every time you use the car, every time you drive it, you are subjecting it to stress. You are creating tiny amounts of damage. And even though you repair most of that damage, you can never repair all of it. Some of it is irreversible, some of it accumulates, and eventually the accumulated damage becomes so great that the car stops working. That's aging. Your body is the same way. Every time your heart beats, every time you take a breath, every time a signal travels down a nerve, you are creating a little bit of damage. Your cells divide, and sometimes they make errors in copying the DNA. Your mitochondria, which are the power plants of your cells, produce free radicals as a byproduct of generating energy. Those free radicals damage proteins and lipids and DNA. Your immune system fights off infections, but in the process, it creates inflammation, and that inflammation damages your own tissues. All of this is happening all the time, and your body tries to clean it up, it tries to repair it, but it can't keep up forever. Now there's another aspect to this, and it has to do with the way your cells are designed. Your cells have a limited number of times they can divide. This is called the Hayflick limit, named after Leonard Hayflick, who discovered it. Every time a cell divides, the ends of its chromosomes, which are called telomeres, get a little bit shorter. Telomeres are like the plastic tips on the ends of shoelaces. They protect the chromosome from damage, but they get shorter with each division, and eventually they get so short that the cell can't divide anymore. It either stops dividing and becomes senescent, which means it just sits there and doesn't do much, or it dies. This is a built-in limit on how many times your cells can renew themselves. Why is there such a limit? Well, one reason is that it protects you from cancer. Cancer is what happens when cells start dividing out of control. If your cells could divide indefinitely, the risk of cancer would be much higher. So the Hayflick limit is a trade-off. It protects you from cancer when you are young, but it contributes to aging when you are old. Your tissues can't renew themselves as effectively, and they gradually deteriorate. But there's more to it than just telomeres. There are also changes in gene expression. As you age, certain genes get turned on or turned off in ways that are not helpful. Some genes that promote inflammation get turned on. Some genes that promote repair get turned off. Why does this happen? Well, part of it has to do with chemical modifications to your DNA, things like methylation, which is the addition of methyl groups to certain bases in the DNA. These modifications can change how genes are expressed without changing the underlying DNA sequence. And over time, these modifications accumulate in patterns that are associated with aging. It's like the software of your cells gets corrupted. And then there's the problem of protein aggregation. Proteins are long chains of amino acids that fold up into specific three-dimensional shapes. The shape of a protein determines its function, but sometimes proteins misfold. They fold into the wrong shape. And when that happens, they can clump together and form aggregates. These aggregates can interfere with the normal functioning of the cell. They can even be toxic. Your cells have mechanisms to break down misfolded proteins, things like the proteasome and autophagy, which is a process where the cell literally eats its own damaged components. But as you age, these mechanisms become less efficient. Misfolded proteins accumulate, aggregates form. And this contributes to diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, which are characterized by the buildup of protein aggregates in the brain. So you see, aging is not just one thing. It's a whole cascade of interrelated processes: DNA damage, telomere shortening, gene expression changes, protein aggregation, mitochondrial dysfunction, inflammation. All of these things are happening at the same time, and they all reinforce each other. It's like a house that's slowly falling apart. First, the roof starts to leak, then the leak damages the walls. Then the walls weaken and the foundation starts to crack. Then the cracks in the foundation cause more leaks in the roof. Everything feeds back on everything else, and the whole structure gradually deteriorates. Now the deep question is this inevitable? Is there anything we can do about it? And the answer is, well, it's complicated. The second law of thermodynamics tells us that we can't stop entropy from increasing in the universe as a whole. But that doesn't mean we can't slow down the aging process. We can't stop it, but we might be able to delay it. We can try to improve the efficiency of our repair mechanisms. We can try to reduce the amount of damage that occurs in the first place. We can try to remove accumulated waste products. We can try to optimize our diet, our exercise, our sleep, all the things that affect how well our bodies function. Some people talk about extending lifespan by targeting specific mechanisms of aging. For example, there are drugs that might protect telomeres or enhance autophagy or reduce inflammation. There are experiments in animals where restricting calories, eating less food without malnutrition, extends lifespan. Why does that work? Well, one idea is that when you eat less, your cells shift into a kind of maintenance mode. They focus more on repair and less on growth. They produce fewer free radicals. They activate genes that promote longevity. This has been shown in worms, flies, mice, even monkeys. Whether it works in humans, we don't know for sure yet, but the evidence is suggestive. But here's the thing, even if we could slow down aging, even if we could extend lifespan by decades or centuries, we still can't escape the second law of thermodynamics. We can create more order in our bodies for a while, but only by creating more disorder in the environment. And eventually, the disorder catches up. Eventually, the damage becomes irreparable. Eventually, the system breaks down. That's not a defect in the design of life. That's a fundamental consequence of the laws of physics. And you know, there's something almost beautiful about that. It's humbling. It reminds us that we are not separate from the universe. We are part of it. We are temporary structures, patterns of order that emerge for a brief moment in the cosmic flow of entropy. We are like whirlpools in a river. The whirlpool has a shape. It has a structure. It seems like a distinct thing. But it's not really separate from the river. It's just a particular pattern in the flow of water. And eventually the whirlpool dissipates. The water flows on. The pattern disappears. But the water is still there. The atoms that made up your body, they don't disappear when you die. They go back into the environment. They become part of other things. They are recycled. You are star stuff, as Carl Sagan said. You are made of atoms that were forged in the cores of ancient stars. And when you die, those atoms go back into the universe, and they become part of new stars, new planets, maybe new life. So why does your body fall apart? Because entropy always increases. Because disorder is more probable than order. Because maintaining order requires energy, and that energy has to come from somewhere, and using that energy creates more disorder elsewhere. Because your body is a complex machine that wears out over time. Because your repair mechanisms are imperfect. Because there are fundamental limits built into the design of your cells. Because you are part of a universe that is constantly moving from order to disorder, from low entropy to high entropy, and you cannot escape that flow. But while you are here, while you are alive, you are fighting against that flow. You are creating a pocket of order in a sea of chaos. You are using the energy of the sun to build structures, to think thoughts, to experience the world. And that's remarkable. That's the miracle of life. Not that it lasts forever, but that it exists at all. Not that we don't age, but that we are here now, aware, thinking, feeling, exploring the universe and trying to understand it. That's what makes it worthwhile. And understanding entropy, understanding the second law, understanding why things fall apart, that doesn't diminish the beauty of life. If anything, it enhances it. It makes us appreciate the fragility and the preciousness of this temporary order that we call ourselves. It makes us marvel at the incredible complexity of the processes that keep us alive. It makes us curious about how far we can push the boundaries, how much we can learn, how long we can extend this dance with disorder. And it reminds us that we are connected to everything. To the sun, to the earth, to the stars, to the fundamental laws that govern the cosmos. So the next time you look in the mirror and see a wrinkle, or feel a joint ache, or notice that you don't recover as quickly as you used to, don't be depressed. Be amazed. Be amazed that you've lasted this long. Be amazed at the billions of molecular processes that are happening right now to keep you alive. Be amazed that you are a temporary victory over entropy, a brief flourish of order in an expanding universe. And be curious, ask questions, learn about the mechanisms, understand the physics, because the more you understand, the more you realize how extraordinary it is that we are here at all. That's the real wonder. Not immortality, but existence itself.